Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 41st episode of ICC Biz Live. Today we have somebody from abroad. Earlier we had someone from UK. Now we have someone from Australia who would be teaching us about spiritualism and coping with day-to-day life. His name is David Rivers. He is an author of the book The Dance of the Kundalini, which I'd like to show to everyone. This book is available in Amazon in India. And David Rivers is a wonderful spiritual coach. As we talk, he will get to know. So now I will hand over the mic to David. David, please give a brief introduction of yourself and what you do, how you guide people.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is David Rivers. I'm I guess you could say I'm a spiritual teacher and a retreat facilitator. I also publish spiritual books, and many years ago now, I wrote this book, The Dance of Kundalini, and this book features in-depth interviews with 4 Western masters who had each undergone a profound awakening process. They had each undergone fully and completely the Kundalini process. And I run a retreat called an energetic awakening intensive that utilizes self-inquiry and dance and voice work and partnered communication exercises to create a unique environment and a unique situation in which the conditions are favorable for people to experience an awakening of the heart and open up to expanded states of consciousness and have a direct experience of the universal field of life energy, which is called prana or Shakti.
Now, not many know. Can you explain what does the name of your book, Dance of the Kundalini, mean? What awakening does it mean?
Okay, so you may have heard of in yoga, that central to yoga is this idea of Kundalini energy, and Kundalini means the compacted or latent or potential spiritual energy that resides inside every human being. And you're likely familiar with the chakras that go from the base of the spine up. It includes the heart, the Ajna chakra or third eye, and the Sahasrara chakra. So when this energy that's known as Kundalini, which is our own storehouse of energy that's inside every human being, but as I say, it's latent. So normally in life, it just functions outwardly. It's what gives us it's awake in a sense in everybody, but it is functioning in an outward capacity to empower us in the world. So when through intense yearning for a spiritual awakening or intense meditation, or just through your karma, or in particular through contact with an enlightened being through a process called Shaktipat, this energy can awaken. And when the Kundalini energy awakens, it travels up the Sushumna, up the spine, and opens and awakens the potential in each of the chakras. And as it passes through each of the chakras, the potential of that chakra is realized. So for example, when the Kundalini energy reaches the heart chakra, we have a direct experience of profound divine love, of universal divine love. When the Kundalini Shakti reaches the Ajna or the third eye, we have what they call in Zen Buddhism Satori, which this is the classically what's thought of as enlightenment, which is it's to directly see into your true nature. It's the vision and the revelation of the oneness of being. And when Kundalini Shakti reaches the Sahasrara, there's a union with God, or union with universal consciousness. That's the union of the all-pervading awareness that's realized in the third eye and the power of God, which is the Shakti. Those two things come together in the Sahasrara, and that's often termed a union with God. So because each of the teachers in my book had undergone this Kundalini awakening process very profoundly, and the way that it played out, even though there are principles that remain the same, there's universal principles, depending on each teacher's situation. For example, one of them was a NASA aerospace engineer. One of them was a Western medical doctor. So as this energy is expanding your consciousness, the old patterns and the egoic perception, the egoic perspective, and the thought structures that are based on the idea of separation, the illusion of separation, all of that becomes reorganized and reconfigured to allow this expansion of consciousness into this divine oneness. So that is the dance. The dance is the dance between the individual consciousness and the ego consciousness and this expanded consciousness and universal consciousness that is opening and awakening until finally the ego is no longer in the dominant position, but it's seen in the context of being a mask that the divine is wearing, we could say.
So what I understand, what you are saying is it is about the spiritual awakening, and through my opening of the third eye, I get united with God, and get God. I not only I love God, but I also get God's love. It's unconditional, whereas human love is conditional. Always people, if they love anyone, tend to express something in return. Now the question is coming to the concept. This is what this message, whom you follow, whom I also follow, Lord Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda. They all said, love God, get united with God, and there is an eightfold path, Gyan Jog, Bhakti Jog, and all that. So my question is the divine. When you think of the divine, does the divine have any gender? Though Hindus are given God various names and shapes, the Lord Shiva, the Lord Durga, but cutting across all spectrum of religions, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and all that. Does the divine have really any gender? What is your opinion as a spiritual leader?
The first thing that springs to mind is my wife. So there is consciousness. There is consciousness which is universal and all-pervading, and it is expressing itself through male and female in the human form. And my perspective is that everything is an expression of this universal consciousness. So we can see in practicality in our daily life, it takes the form of a male and it takes the form of female. So that's like my first level of answer, is that we can see the divine as female in our own wife or partner, and in the women and female females in the world, and in the males in the world, the divine is male. But then further than that, if we go from the relative level, that's like a relative expression. Yogically, as you know, that it's said that the all-pervading still consciousness, which is unchanging, is said to be the masculine. Is in the Hindu terminology, Lord. For example, we can say Lord Shiva, and then that's the thing is that the what we term the masculine and feminine aspects. This is from my experience. So what we term the feminine and the masculine aspects of God are one and the same consciousness in functioning differently. So the all-pervading awareness moves within itself or vibrates. It is within its own ocean of stillness. It is a mass of vibrations, and that mass of vibration gives birth to all the various forms and becomes the universe. So in that sense, then you see, it's the vibrational aspect of consciousness that becomes the universe, and hence becomes the earth and the human beings and so forth. So in that sense, then, consciousness, from our perspective as a human being, and using our human language, we can say, well, that is the divine mother, because that consciousness is giving rise to the universe, you see. And it is the same consciousness that is also an ocean of silence and stillness, that is unmoving. And the essence of the vibration of consciousness, the essence of the mother, is, if you go into the core of it and you go into the center of that vibrating energy, it is the absolute. It is the stillness of that we would term the masculine, or Shiva. So that's it's a metaphysical sounding answer from my own direct experience. But then we have another perspective, which I would call the archetypical dimension, perhaps, wherein that we find that yogis and mystics and meditators and even everyday human beings all around the world, transcending culture, have had experiences of the divine in some kind of apparition or vision or manifestation, that where God can appear as a goddess, or as the divine mother. And we have in Tibetan Buddhism, they have Tara, and there's Kuan Yin in Buddhism, and in the Catholic Church we have Mother Mary. So we have these symbols of the divine as a mother and the divine feminine at the archetypical level, I would call it, across many different cultures and many different spiritual traditions. But ultimately, in my view, all there is consciousness. As I said, the consciousness that vibrates and gives birth to the universe. We can look at that. We can refer to that as the mother, but it's still the same consciousness that is the ocean of silence. In my understanding and my experience is everything is a vibration of consciousness, and we can look at it in a way that's helpful for us. So if it's helpful for you to relate to God as the mother or as the divine feminine, then I would personally encourage you to adopt that approach, where for some people that's not their jam, so to speak, and it's there's no particular set way or best way to approach God. It's only what works for you.
So very well explained. What I understand from you, it is the divine which is present in various forms. Divine is not in a one singular form. You are again quoting my Guru Swami Vivekananda. He said, "Where are you searching God? Whoever loves the life, the animals or mammals is actually loving God. Where I cannot search God in temples and churches and any other. I should search God within human beings or even within animals also. It is what you are calling the universal consciousness. That is what he said. You are quoting him in a different way, but the message is same as Swami Vivekananda. I'm getting. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Now,
you.
coming to the next question, the more this is common human nature, the more we face stress in our lives, we turn to the divine. But why don't we come to the divine from day one? Only when we are hurt, when we are sad, when we are crying, we go to the divine, come, God, rescue us. Why don't we follow God from day one? In my life also, after I lost my some of my close family members in succession, I turned to God, and there I got a lot of peace. But before that, had I been that follower of God? No. Why? Why? I mean, can you explain?
I think this is one of the mysteries of the spiritual path, but it's also part of the beauty of the extra depth and dimension that by virtue of being people that are interested in and on the spiritual path, we have it gives us this access that the tragedies and the difficulties in life and the suffering in life can and do, like the fact that you're pointing this out, that the suffering and the loss in life can and does open people to the spiritual dimension. You see how what a beautiful thing that is. So it's that's something just that I just want to acknowledge is like how by virtue of being practitioners on the path, so to speak, we get access to these enriched outcomes that that happen because you're spiritual. See, if you weren't already God centered, then when that loss happened, I would suggest that it wouldn't have turned into, it wouldn't have, perhaps it wouldn't have flowered as deeply into a spiritual opening the way that it did for you. So I would imagine that you were interested in God, and typically people are. I think we all fundamentally are, but that interest and our love of God and our desire to grow spiritually, it just gets occluded or it gets covered over by the intensity of our interest in the world. So, and because when there's a loss happens, the transitory nature of the world is brought right in front of us. It's like a visceral, it's a profound visceral uh, demonstration of a spiritual principle that life is transitory. We can understand. Imagine if we're studying spirituality and we read all of the phenomena in life, the realm of form is going to pass. It's one thing to understand it intellectually. It's another thing to have that spiritual truth, if you will, thrust in front of us, and where we live through it, and so I think it's natural that opens us to the divine. And the answer, the other side of the coin is, can we approach God, and can we keep that spiritual flame and current of spiritual interest alive in the midst of our life, and in the midst of success? And I think we can. It just depends on our approach and the depth of our spiritual interest, but also the way we view the world, our perspective on life, can be such that, like, my tradition is Kashmir Shaivism, where the teachings express the principle of oneness, and the yogis remind us that the very world that we live in, the day-to-day world of earning a living and raising a family, is also an expression of God. So that's one way to approach life in the world that includes God, and that includes that spiritual path, if you will. But to come back to your point, I think it's a beautiful demonstration of the advantage of being a yogi or a yogini in this modern world, is that by following these spiritual principles, when we do encounter a loss at the level of the world, it can become a gain at the level of our soul.
Another question. Bhagavad Gita says that truly enlightened spirit is one who is indifferent to happiness and indifferent to grief. What is your opinion? How many are really that indifferent, are that enlightened spirit, that I am indifferent to grief and grief, as well as indifferent to success?
Indifferent to success.
Indifferent.
Yes, I agree. So, however, it's with a caveat. So, and I think this is an important point in understanding enlightenment. It's because when we have that direct seeing of our true nature, or the revelation of the oneness of being, I like to call it, what is revealed, that which is revealed, is a deeper dimension of the consciousness that we are already, that we are right now. It's not something new, but it's a deeper dimension, right? And the only difference is that deeper dimension, you normally, because it's oneness, it's very easy for it to identify, because it's completely one with the body and the mind. It's one with the whole universe. But you see, normally we think of ourselves as the body and the mind. And what the yogis are speaking about, and what the great scriptures are speaking about as being indifferent, is this dimension of oneness. I mean, you could also say that dimension of oneness is indifferent to the appearance or the disappearance of the universe, let alone success and failure. But at the level of the body and the mind, in the yogi that has had that realization, depending on their karmas, their parabdha karma, and depending on the qualities in that yogi or that individual's body and mind. So they, for example, some people, have a personality that is easily angered. You might have heard of the famous sage Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was famous for becoming angry and throwing people out of his satsang. But he was indifferent. But the indifference in Nisargadatta was the indifference of the transcendental consciousness that is all pervading. His body and mind probably preferred to eat a certain type of breakfast, for example. He was a smoker, and he kind of that habit. He said some habits linger on when someone asked him about it. So an enlightened sage or a great guru, like Ramakrishna or Yogananda, they're in touch with this dimension of oneness that is, we can call it indifference, but you can also call it equality. So it's indifferent, but it's not uncaring. it's also full of equal love for everything. You see, it's full of divine affection and divine love, but equal for everything. And that's what's expressing through their body and mind. But their body and mind will still have reaction of sorrow or sadness to loss. If a guru has a child and the child were to die, then that sage very likely will experience profound sadness at the level of the body and the mind. I think, if anything, at the level of the body and mind, the enlightened sage perhaps has more sensitivity, but they have this other dimension, a deeper dimension simultaneously, that is transcendental to the phenomenal world. And that's where these statements in the scriptures are pointing us. All of these statements in the scriptures are pointing us to this deeper dimension of our being and our consciousness. I hope that makes sense.
Now, next question is, I as formless, conscious, and nothingness. Is this body separate from the spirit or spiritual awakening?
Yes, so that's a line from my book, right, where I was describing the Kundalini process and the experience directly prior to having this revelation of the oneness of being happen, where my body rushed into the distance all of a sudden. The sense of being a me, a localized consciousness, dissolved, and simultaneously my body seemed to just rush into the distance. And then I as a formless conscious nothingness seemed to shrink down and become smaller than the smallest, and simultaneously bigger than the biggest. And suddenly there was this revelation of oneness, a revelation of I call it the fabric of existence, which is the oneness. And so that awakening does reveal that what we fundamentally are is completely independent, yes, from the body and the mind. However, the nature of the consciousness in this kind of yogic awakening and union with the divine, the nature of the consciousness that is revealed, it's completely paradoxical, because the nature of the consciousness that's revealed is the fabric of existence. It's a oneness, that it's universal. Anything that appears, it's formless, right? It's formless and all pervading, but anything that's appearing in form, it's made of the same fabric. All of so including the body. The one way to describe it would be, if we look at water, if we take like the ocean, and we take an ice cube, right, and we float the ice cube in the ocean, so we can say that the ice cube and the ocean are separate. But we can also say that the ice cube and the ocean are both made of water. So it's paradoxical. The spirit, we transcend the body, but the body and the universe are made of the spirit that we are. The difference is the body is a temporary appearance, and our formless spirit nature as spirit is eternal. One is temporary, so the body's ultimately not what we are because it's temporary, but the essence of the body will return to the ocean of consciousness that we are. I hope that makes sense.
Next question. Only when we think of spiritual awakening and we think of separating the spirit from the flesh. But why we cannot do it earlier? Apparently, the monks, saints, in the various various following, they have spiritual awakening and separating the spirit from the flesh. They can do it much earlier. How do they do it? By control of all material desires?
Yeah, well, I don't think yes, yes. I mean, those yogis and those saints do focus on transcending all material desires. But my answer would be um, to remind you, or we need to remind ourselves that we are this spirit already. So it's a matter of reminding ourselves and pondering this and thinking of it, and we can say, having faith in the words of the yogis and the gurus, like having faith in what Ramakrishna has said and in what the Gita says, and bringing it to mind, because the the soul is already more than the body. So I think that's the key thing that's coming through in a lot of these questions. That is um, the insight that can be helpful in our daily lives, is to remind ourselves that we are, let's say, a soul that is like a wave in the ocean of God. And that soul, we have this body as our vehicle. If we remind ourselves we're more than our thoughts, we're more than our body, we are more than our emotions, we're more than our job, and remind ourselves, well, the yogis tell us that this soul that I am, or the consciousness that I am, is a child of the divine. It's a child of God, like a wave is a child of the ocean. We're a child of the source, and we are at one with the source. And that understanding is aligned with the reality of our true nature. It's aligned with the reality that Krishna is expressing to Arjuna in the Gita. So that's the idea of the Bhagavad Gita, is to read the Gita and take on the perspective that's revealed. Krishna reveals all of these great truths and principles to Arjuna, and the idea of that book is the reader will internalize those attitudes and internalize that understanding, which principally pertains to this question of the body and the spirit. So we can, imagine I'm going through a difficult day at work, and I didn't get the promotion, or I got a demotion, or my project failed, when I've got a big team of people and everything's falling apart. On one level, that's difficult, and it will remain difficult no matter what, because it is a difficult thing. But if we are studying the Gita, and we're on the spiritual path, we are doing our practices and our sadhana, we're studying scriptures, we can remind ourselves, okay, this is going on on the surface, just like Krishna says in the Gita, everything is his divine play. Krishna is playing all the roles ultimately, and we can remind us, well, I'm more than this, and I'm actually here in this body during this life with this opportunity to grow spiritually. So just as before you said, when you suffered some losses in your family, and then your devotion to God flowered and opened up and became deeper, in the same way, when we face difficulties in our daily life, in our relationships, perhaps in our family or our marriage, or with our boss or our employees, and whatever the context is, those difficulties can become for us a reminder that we are spirit, that we are a soul, and that we have this opportunity to grow spiritually and progress towards enlightenment in this lifetime.
Spiritual leader. How do you help in spiritual awakening and progress of your students? And if your students have had spiritual awakening, how do you measure it?
Well, I run a retreat that is a 3-day intensive, very, very intensive retreat that's designed to bring about an awakening through bringing together a diverse set of encounters with your own body and your own consciousness and with the others in the group, and by employing specific spiritual principles and practices over the course of that 3 days, we are able to create an atmosphere that basically takes advantage of certain principles in life, and that atmosphere can bring about this awakening. So by facilitating intensive retreat is one thing. A big part of that retreat is, you are likely familiar with this term, Atma Vicharya, or self-inquiry. So one thing that I teach is self-inquiry, and in the retreat we do self-inquiry in a what's called an enlightenment dyad, where you'll be sitting, two people sit across from each other, and one is a listening partner, one is a communicating and contemplating partner, and they change roles every 5 minutes. And the listening partner gives the instruction to the contemplating partner, tell me who you are. And then the contemplating partner, their job is to intend to directly experience yourself, whatever that is. And then, so you're doing this deep self-inquiry with a partner, and whatever comes up, who am I? You look, you intend to experience directly, and then communicate that to your partner for 5 minutes. And so the self-inquiry in the context of communication in a dyad like that is very powerful, very, very powerful. And it deepens and intensifies the self-inquiry process. So apart from the retreats that I run, I also offer Shaktipat. So my guru, Master Charles Cannon, who you can see in the picture here, he was a teacher in a what's called a Shaktipat lineage. When I met Master Charles, I had this tremendous experience of Kundalini awakening, which led to this Satori, or enlightenment experience. And Master Charles gave me what is known as the Guru's command, and told me, I want you to, I'm giving you the command, the same command my guru gave me. He said his guru was a teacher named Baba Muktananda. So Muktananda said to Master Charles, you're to give Shaktipat to awaken Kundalini, and to teach meditation, and teach the non-dual tantric spirituality in a way that's modern and unique for the West. So Master Charles gave me that same job, you could say, and that same command. And as part of receiving that from Master Charles, I carry this lineage forward, and also give the Shaktipat, or the energy transfer, that he gave me. So Shaktipat is essentially, it means energy transfer. And it's a process where the awakened Kundalini energy in the teacher can touch the latent or dormant Kundalini in a student and awaken that energy. And it's a blessing that comes from the lineage. It's not a blessing that comes from me personally. It's a blessing that's been passed through the tradition. It's a blessing of all of the masters in this Shaktipat lineage.
So, sir, what I understand, you go uh, into the deep inside the mind of your student and try to awaken the dormant soul or the spirit in the student himself or herself. If I have understood you correctly.
Yes. That's one way to say. I mean, I make myself available so to anyone that is interested in enlightenment and awakening this Kundalini energy, or anyone that's interested in spiritual growth or self-inquiry. So, and I have correspondence with people, and I have one-on-one sessions with people. Mostly I approach this as a spirit. I'm available as your spiritual friend who can encourage you and guide you, and also I also have a toolkit of techniques and yogas and sadhanas that depending on where you're at, I can prescribe some sadhana, you could say. And it's a relationship, and it's a dynamic living relationship. So sometimes that happens very casually and informally, and sometimes it happens formally and more intensively. So, and ultimately always it's spiritual friendship, and it's the dimension of oneness itself. It's the awakened energy itself that is alive and vibrating. The awakened Kundalini that has flowered all the way through to the crown, vibrates with its own intelligence and its own energy. And that awakened energy, my guru, Master Charles, used to call it the energetic field of the teacher. So that is ultimately the teacher. And then, there might be some interaction and relationship on the surface, but really it's that enlightening energy that's able to have an impact on someone in a really, really deep way, sometimes subtle and sometimes profound.
I have many more questions with me, but now I open the floor for audience to ask, because it's not every day they will get to hear ask you. But
hello. The book that I've written is the dance of Kundalini, and oh goodness, the book that I would most recommend would be I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj.
no, sir, mine. I have three more questions I have to ask. One question is, no matter how much you learn from gurus or books, real learning comes from life. Do you agree? Or
Yes.
you would say?
Yes. However, the guru and the book are part of life. So, and in particular, I make the point that the learning that can happen with a guru, in terms of this energetic dimension, and where the energy or the vibration of the guru can affect a really profound expansion and opening of your soul. It can open what I've been terming Kundalini energy, or we could just say that it can expand. The guru's energy field can expand your soul, and it's that relationship with the guru is unique, because that the dimension of the guru that is the real teacher is your own true nature. It's not something different or separate. It's your own true nature that's just coming you're meeting your true nature in the form of another human being. But then that said, when that energy touches you in Shakti part or just through, the resonance of being sitting with an awakened teacher, it's an inner experience. So even though, let's say Vivekananda sat with Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna's enlightened energy definitely would have been like a tsunami wave that, washed over Vivekananda. And that's the enlightened energy of Ramakrishna impacting Vivekananda. But his experience would be in the interior, the innermost core of his being, exploding with light and oneness and love. And that is his own direct inner experience. But yes, ultimately, of course, always it's the learning that comes from our own, that arises within us as our own experience that's most important.
To corporate life, we have to achieve outcomes and meet targets. But Bhagavad Gita says the effort is in our hand, but not the outcome. If I tell my manager or to whom I report that the outcome is not in my hand, he will show me the door. In corporate life, I cannot quote Bhagavad Gita, but how do I reconcile corporate life with spiritual awakening?
That's a very, very good question. It's something I'm deeply interested in. I feel that this modern world, and in the direction it's going, with so many things changing, so many people, the landscape of their career is changing so dramatically. I think even before the wave of change is hitting people, in certain careers, we know it's on its way, these big changes. So that must be causing, tremendous anxiety for people. But you're asking about the context of you're in the job and you're doing your best, but the outcome is not in your hands. And then that's in the Gita, Krishna is teaching we should do our best, but we should remember the outcome's not in our hands, because it's ultimately in God's hands, and that is going to bring us to detachment. This is one powerful way to detach from the world. And as we pointed out before, as we detach from the world, God's love becomes more, and God's presence becomes more available to us, or that expansion of consciousness. Lots of different ways we can language that. So I think we need to approach our job. I would recommend approaching the job as if the outcome is in your hands. It might be wise, but knowing deep down, and knowing, in a very vivid way, that the outcome's in God's hands, but we act as if it's in our hands.
Me, please. We are the makers of our destiny, Swami Vivekananda says. Some say our destiny is a predetermined script. Bhagavad Gita teaches that destiny is a combination of past karmas, fate, and present choices, not a completely predetermined fixed script. You say in your book that we are all computers who have come with predetermined programs, but we can change the data and hence change the experience. Aren't all these statements the same?
They are. And it goes back to what I was referencing in the beginning of our interview, where I was saying that the enlightenment pertains to a deeper dimension of our consciousness. And so we are, as my guru Master Charles would have said, he loved using the term multidimensional. Which is to say that, we have, for example, we have a psychological dimension, or the dimension of the mind, and we have the dimension of our feeling and our emotion, and we have the dimension of our body, and we have the dimension of our interior the consciousness or pure being, or what Eckhart Tolle would term presence, right? So I view those statements as being the same, and they all speak from these different dimensions of our consciousness. And I think that those yogis, disseminated their teachings to the audience they were with by divine grace. So in accordance with God's intelligence, someone like Vivekananda, the teachings that came through him were the teachings that were meant to be given, from the particular dimension that he spoke from, in that period, and to those people that he spoke to. But then there's a depth of consciousness where it's revealed that all there is consciousness. So there's neither destiny, it's it doesn't matter how much of a show the light puts on, it's still all light, you see? So we could say, if the light of God is putting on this incredible display of the universe within which our lives are happening, and if we look at that, our lives, we zero into the human life, we can see, oh, it's moving in this direction and it's going in this way. And you can go further in and you can see, oh, these choices are being made. And those choices are affecting these outcomes. But ultimately, it's still all a display or a celebration of God's light.
How do you reconcile spiritual awakening with modern scientific technology? Technology is progressing in leaps and bounds. How do you reconcile that? Is spiritual awakening with scientific technology, or you would rather say spiritual awakening is much above scientific technology?
Is it so? So you're asking, can you reconcile them? Can they be? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, as I am, if I am sitting in front of a quantum computer, can I also think of spiritual awakening?
Of course you can. Yes, because I'll look at this from a couple of different perspectives or dimensions. So on the one hand, if we take what Krishna is saying in the Gita, and we take Krishna at his word, and we take Yogananda and Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, they all say that consciousness is all there is, that the fabric of existence is woven from God's love. So therefore, that has to include technology, because the yogis tell us, in Yogananda's fantastic elucidation of his awakening, and he describes his consciousness expanding and waves of God consciousness, and seeing that the stars and the nebula and the planets and from the microcosmic, the macrocosmic level, everything is a vibration of God. So that has to include technology. That's one level. Now there's another level. If we look at yoga and the spiritual path, and we can look to other traditions as well, we can see, for example, musical instruments are employed. We can see video is employed. We can you can share teachings with audio and video. And I would venture to say virtually all spiritual teachers take advantage of this. We print books, which is a form of technology. Paper and words on the book is one of the oldest forms of that's a technology. It's just now become more advanced, and it's up to us it's up to us to bring the principles of the Bhagavad Gita into the technology that we develop. So for the developers and the founders and the investors, it's very important to support technology that has humanitarian or spiritual or personal development as its motivation and as its purpose and intention. But then there's another dimension that it's up to us, you and I, the users of the technology. We can approach technology in a way that supports our spiritual development and also supports happiness and peace in the world. All of these new technologies that are coming at us that are quite overwhelming, they all give the average human being all kinds of advantage in terms of studying scriptures, access to teachings, the ability to share those teachings, the ability to create creative materials that are based on those teachings. And then so we can look a little bit more deeply. We can see my guru, Master Charles, was a pioneer in developing brainwave entrainment music. You might have heard of binaural beats that can entrain the alpha brain waves, theta, and even delta, the really deep, slow brain waves. And Master Charles was involved in helping map the brain wave profiles of advanced yogis with different degrees of enlightenment. And they found that these yogis in this awareness of oneness did have more balance in the left and right hemisphere of the brain, and they had deeper alpha, theta, and delta simultaneously with the busyness of the beta. The beta brainwaves didn't go away. It's just that they had the addition of these other deeper brainwaves while they were in the waking state. Now, the technology that can help us to entrain our body and our mind into meditative states, and even the heart and compassion and love, or bring wholeness and health to the body and mind, it's come forward in leaps and bounds since Master Charles helped to develop the brainwave entrainment technology. We've now got all kinds of technology that is explicitly designed to help people enter into deep meditative states very rapidly, and that comes with corresponding benefits and corresponding responsibility. But it's certainly possible now to incorporate technology into our sadhana, and I think it's important that we explore this. I think it's important for people to explore this and make room for it and talk about it, because that's what's going to shape the direction that this technological revolution takes. We can help to shape that by the way we engage with the technology.
Question, sir. If it was not technology, I sitting in India would not be talking to you in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah, nowadays there are many psychologists, psychiatrists, life coaches, and many senior people take their advice as a big role. They play a big role in stress management. What is your advice to the life coaches and the psychiatrists of today? What is your advice?
Yes. So my advice is I would encourage you, if you're a life coach or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you are living in a period where there is a tsunami of change coming, and there's going to be a tsunami of upheaval in people's lives, and fundamentally that upheaval in people's lives that will be brought about, and it's already happening now through this technological revolution. It's fundamentally at the level of identity. And so, because in our modern world, we have been enculturated to identify and derive our sense of self in a large measure from our role, from our job, our means of livelihood. And already now, in this early stage of this incredible technological revolution that's happening, people's means of income and their art and their craft, what they have gone to university to study, and what is now their career, already in large numbers, people are being displaced from their jobs. And so we live in a culture globally, predominantly, where we've been enculturated, and it's been intense. It's still intense, that our identity comes from this, from Korea. So what I'm mentioning this point about identity in relation to spirituality and spiritual awakening, because what people what people get from the spiritual path and from interacting with these great gurus and great teachers that are present in the modern world, and from their sadhana and their spiritual path, is predominantly a shift at the level of identity. We've been speaking about, is spirit more than the body? Is it separate from the body? And so I would encourage you, as a psychiatrist or psychologist or a life coach, that if you're not already exploring this, to explore the spiritual path as it's manifesting in the modern world, and with quite a broad approach. I would encourage you to explore different traditions, modern spiritual movements such as Eckhart Tolle, yoga, and so forth, things that are modern, where you can find people sharing their experiences, people sharing their story of how this spiritual path has impacted them. And I suggest that you will find, if you look with this lens, primarily it's a shift in identity. It's an expansion of identity such that the individual derives their sense of self from something vaster than their personal circumstance, because the spiritual teachings are predominantly going in the direction of, you're more than the body, you're more than the mind, you're a soul having this journey. And that soul has its own goal of expansion and spiritual growth, and therefore there's a whole dimension of activity in meditation, prayer, attending spiritual gatherings, studying spiritual teachings, things like Reiki healing and so on. All the modern forms of spirituality and the traditional forms that there's a boom in their popularity at the moment. They all function or serve to enrich someone's deepest inner dimension of meaning, and importantly, meaning at the level of identity. Is also embedded in the spiritual path ideas of service, selfless service. That if it's a spiritual tradition that has this understanding of oneness, then that's profound, because people can identify with their neighbor, and it opens deeper compassion, deeper empathy. And why am I saying this in the context of the modern world and the technological revolution? It's because if you've got, at the level of identity, meaning that is vivid and present and real in your world, that's derived from your sense of oneness with others, which gives you deep empathy for others. And that deep meaning can be sustained and deepened, and you can grow that meaning, which would be spiritual growth, by simply sitting still and meditating. And then on top of that, all the examples of the saints, typically they didn't own much, so there you've got references and role models in spirituality that are completely outside of the modern world. So that's what I would have to offer. I would encourage you to explore the dimension of spirituality and spiritual principles and see how you might be able to apply that or identify that process in your clients.
So, sir, thank you. We have overshot our time a lot, but it was highly enjoyable. And if we get more inquiries, we'll connect to you. And so, with this, we end today's session. Thank you and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.